So a very common question is, so, okay, you learn French and Tahitian, they must be pretty similar. And it couldn't be further from the truth. French is a Latin language. I often compare, it's like Spanish and Tongan, because a lot of people have heard Tongan or Hawaiian. They've heard how it sounds. Tahitian is a Polynesian language similar to Tongan, Samoan, Hawaiian. Words are very similar, sounds are similar. French is a Latin language, and so they're very different, completely different. What the difference in French is that French in Tahiti is very informal, and then they roll their R's. So instead of the R in the back of the throat that most people are familiar with French, because of the Tahitian language, there are a lot of R's and T's in Tahitian, and so they're rolled off the tongue. And so French in Tahiti has the R's rolled. The other interesting thing about Tahitian is that, any Polynesian language, you pronounce the vowels, and it's usually the long form of the vowel. So A is A, I is E, the letter E is pronounced A, O is O, and U is U. And so if you can pronounce those vowels all the time with those sounds, you're going to be pretty close. There are times where that does change a little bit. And then besides that, there are consonants. And Tahitian has very few consonants, T being the most common. And in the written language, you'll see other letters that are actually pronounced with a T. So a common thing that missionaries do is run out and buy a Tahitian Book of Mormon after they get their call. And they say, okay, and they're trying to pronounce it, it's Te Buka a Moromona. Well, that word buka, B-U-K-A, it looks like book, but it's actually pronounced puta. So the B has a P sound, and the K has a T sound. So there's a lot of words like that where the written language, you substitute consonant sounds for other consonants. So like the T, the D, and the S, and there's a whole bunch that are the K, the C, they're all pronounced with the T sound. P is another one. R is another common one where you don't have very many consonant sounds. So the language is very simple. It's also very simple grammatically, where you don't have conjugation of verbs. You have a sentence is set up with the tense, the verb, and who's doing it. So if I want to say I'm going to eat, I say a, which is the tense, the verb tama'a, which is to eat, and then I, vo, e tama'a vo. And so it's very simple, going, eat, I. And so it sounds almost like, if you were to translate it directly, it sounds kind of like cavemanish. And so it's a very simple language, but Tahitian is definitely the harder language to learn because French has so many similarities being a Latin language, and just the way the language is set up, and also vocabulary-wise. Tahitian vocabulary is nothing close to English whatsoever. There are a few words like buka, like puta, book, which looks similar, but that is only because those are words that Tahitians didn't originally have in their vocabulary. And when the Protestant missionaries came to Tahiti, I think in the 1500s or 1600s, they came and they brought Christianity to Tahiti. And so that's predominant religion there. Most people are Christian. Most people believe in Christ and in God. They translated. They were the first ones to write down the language. And so they brought a lot of words and vocabulary that weren't existent in Tahiti, like a book. Books weren't really existent, so the word for book looks like book, but it's pronounced differently, pronounced the way that they pronounce things in Tahitian. So another one is hammer. The word for hammer is hamara. So but there's only a handful of those that look like English. The rest of them don't look anything like English. And it can be very long and challenging. Names can be long and challenging, and people speak very fast. So Tahitian is hard to learn. You learn French, and then French becomes your first language, and Tahitian becomes the language that you're learning. It's not one that you really can even get a good jump on. You just kind of have to be there and get thrown to the fire and thrown to the wolves. And it takes, I remember about 6 months into my mission feeling confident in French. About 9 to 12 months in, feeling confident in Tahitian. And then it wasn't until the very end of my mission I felt like, okay, I'm fluent enough in Tahitian where the conversation doesn't have any lulls, where they don't realize that I'm still learning this language. So it can be a challenge, but it's a fun challenge to learn both and continue to learn both.